The October wind cut through downtown Portland like a knife. It was the kind of cold that seeped into your bones, the kind that made people walk faster, heads down, eyes averted, the kind of cold that made a 6-year-old girl invisible. Emma Bennett stood on the corner of Morrison and Fifth, her small frame barely visible between the rushing bodies of commuters heading home, her blonde hair tangled and dirty, whipped around her face. Her fingers, red and raw from the cold, clutched a piece of cardboard. Someone had given her a marker earlier in the day. She had tried her best to write the words her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had taught her. But Mrs. Patterson hadn't taught them how to spell hungry yet, so Emma had copied it from a billboard she'd seen last week. Please help, hungry babies. The words were crooked, the letters uneven. But they were there, held up by hands that should have been holding toys, crayons, a warm cup of hot chocolate. Instead, they held desperation. Behind her sat a rusty shopping cart. Inside, wrapped in a thin blanket that had seen better days, were her twin baby brothers, Liam and Owen, 2 years old. Blue eyes that stared up at their sister with the kind of trust that would break your heart if you stopped long enough to look. Emma hadn't eaten since yesterday. Her stomach had stopped growling hours ago. Now it just ached, a dull, constant reminder that she had failed. Again. Most people walked past. Some glanced. A few looked away so fast you'd think the sight of her burned their eyes. Every now and then, a coin would clink into the plastic cup at her feet. $17.23. She'd counted it twice. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. Around 11:30, something changed. A woman stopped. She wore a business suit, expensive looking. Her heels clicked on the pavement as she approached. Emma looked up, hope flickering in her chest like a candle in the wind. The woman's face softened. Her eyes filled with something Emma had learned to recognize. Pity. But this time, pity came with action. The woman reached into her purse. She pulled out not coins, but actual bills. $5, $10. Then her hand went back in. 2 potatoes, a small bag of carrots. Here, sweetie, the woman said, her voice thick with emotion. I wish I could do more, but I'm late for a meeting. Please take care of those babies. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she clutched the vegetables like they were made of gold. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. The woman hurried away, and Emma could see her, wiping her eyes as she disappeared into the crowd. Emma looked down at Liam and Owen. Their little faces were scrunching up in that way that meant they'd start crying soon. The fussy, hungry cry that tore at Emma's heart every single time. She needed to feed them. Now, not later. Emma remembered something she'd seen homeless people do near the park. They'd made little fires in metal cans to keep warm and cook food. She looked around, her 6-year-old mind racing with adult problems. Then she saw it, an old abandoned grill leaning against a dumpster behind a closed restaurant. With strength that surprised even her, Emma dragged the grill back to their corner. She found newspapers in a recycling bin, broken wooden pallets behind a store. Her daddy had taught her to be resourceful, back when he could still teach her things, back before the sickness took his energy away. We're survivors, Emma girl, he used to say. Bennetts don't give up. It took 20 minutes and 3 burnt fingers, but Emma got a small fire going. She carefully placed the potatoes on the grill, watching them start to cook. The smell made her mouth water so much she had to swallow hard. It hurt. Everything hurt. Liam and Owen stopped fussing. The flames mesmerized them. Their blue eyes reflected the flickering light. See, Emma told them, trying to sound brave and grown up like Mommy. Emma takes care of you, just like Mommy would if she could. Mommy. The thought of her made Emma's chest tight. Grace Bennett was home right now, lying in their small, cold apartment, too weak to even get out of bed most days. The medicine she needed cost more money than they'd ever had, even before she got sick. Emma had tried calling 911 once, but when the paramedics came, Mommy had sent them away. Can't afford the hospital, she'd said, her voice barely a whisper. We'll be fine, Emma. We'll figure it out. But they weren't fine. They were so far from fine that Emma sometimes forgot what fine felt like. As the potatoes cooked, Emma made a decision. She was going to call Mommy and tell her they had food today. She'd taken Mommy's old cell phone with her this morning, the one that barely worked anymore, the one that only had a few minutes left on it. She pulled it from her pocket. The screen was cracked so bad she could barely see the numbers. Her small fingers pressed what she thought was Mommy's number, the digits she'd memorized for emergencies. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Emma held her breath, hoping Mommy was awake enough to answer. Hello? The voice that answered was not her mother's. It was a man's voice. Deep, authoritative, impatient. "Who is this?" Emma's heart sank. Wrong number. She must have pressed a button wrong because of the cracked screen. She was about to hang up when the man spoke again. "Hello? Is someone there? I can hear breathing." Emma's voice came out small and scared. "I'm sorry, I was trying to call my mommy." There was a pause on the other end. When the man spoke again, his tone had changed completely. The impatience was gone. Something else had taken its place. Something that sounded almost like fear. "Sweetheart, where are you? Are you okay?" Emma looked at her brothers, at the grill with the cooking potatoes, at the busy street where nobody really saw them. Suddenly, all the fear and exhaustion and hunger she'd been holding back crashed over her like a wave. "Mister, we eat on the street," Emma said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. She didn't know why she said it like that. She didn't know why those specific words came out. But they did, and on the other end of the line, in a glass tower 40 floors above the city, they hit Benjamin Morgan like a bullet to the chest. Benjamin Morgan had built his empire on making decisions. Quick ones, right ones, decisions worth millions of dollars, decisions that affected thousands of employees, decisions that had made him one of the wealthiest tech CEOs in the Pacific Northwest. But in that moment, hearing those 5 words from a child's voice, Ben forgot about every decision he'd ever made, every deal he'd ever closed, every board meeting, every contract, every dollar. "Mommy, we eat on the street." He was in the middle of the Henderson merger meeting. $500 million on the table. Robert Hutchinson and 3 board members from Henderson Corp sat across from him. Marcus Chen, his CFO and closest friend, had been mid-presentation when Ben's phone rang. Ben never answered unknown numbers during meetings. Never. It was rule 1 of maintaining professional boundaries. But something made him look at the phone. Some instinct. Some voice in his head that sounded remarkably like Sarah's. Sarah, his wife. Dead 3 years from breast cancer that had ravaged her body in 6 brutal months. Sarah, who had begged him to have children. Sarah, who had died wishing they'd started a family sooner. Sarah, who had made him promise with her last breaths that he wouldn't spend his life alone. "Promise me you'll help others, Ben. Promise me you won't close your heart." He'd answered the phone. And now, hearing this child's voice, something inside him cracked open. "Baby, listen to me very carefully," Ben said, standing up from the conference table. "What street are you on? Can you see any signs?" The little girl's voice came back, uncertain. Morrison Street, by the big bank." "Morrison and what? What cross street, honey?" "I don't know. There's a coffee shop on the corner, the green one." Ben was already moving. He grabbed his coat from the back of his chair. Marcus stared at him, confused. "Ben, what?" "Stay exactly where you are," Ben said into the phone, ignoring Marcus. "Do not move. Do not talk to anyone. I'm coming to get you right now. Do you understand me?" "But I don't know you," the little girl said, and Ben could hear the fear and hope warring in her voice. "You will," Ben said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. "You will. I'm 10 minutes away. Stay on the line with me, okay? Tell me your name." "Emma Bennett. But everyone calls me Emma." "Emma, that's a beautiful name. I'm Benjamin, Benjamin Morgan. And Emma, I need you to be brave for just a little bit longer. Can you do that for me?" "Yes, sir, I can be brave." Ben was at the elevator now, phone pressed to his ear. Behind him, Robert Hutchinson's voice rose in anger. "Morgan, where the hell are you going? We're in the middle of a $500 million negotiation." Ben turned, his face a mask of steel. "Reschedule it." "Reschedule? Are you out of your mind? They flew in from Tokyo. Then they can fly back and come again next week." Ben stepped into the elevator. "Marcus, handle this." Marcus Chen had known Ben for 12 years. They'd started Morgan Tech Solutions together, 2 ambitious kids with a dream and a garage. He'd seen Ben through Sarah's death, through the dark years that followed. He'd watched his friend become a ghost of himself, buried in work because it was easier than feeling. But the look on Ben's face now, that wasn't the dead-eyed workaholic Marcus had grown used to. That was something else, something alive. "Go," Marcus said. "I'll take care of it." The elevator doors closed. Ben kept talking to Emma, his voice steady even as his heart hammered in his chest. "Tell me, Emma, are those your brothers with you?" "Yes, sir. Liam and Owen. They're 2. They're twins." Ben closed his eyes briefly. Twins. 2-year-old twins. "And where is your mommy, sweetheart?" "She's home. She's sick. Real sick. That's why I had to bring Liam and Owen with me. She can't take care of them today. And how long have you been on the street, Emma? Since morning, since 7. It was noon. This 6-year-old child had been on the street for 5 hours. In October, in Portland, taking care of 2 babies. Emma, you are the bravest, strongest little girl I've ever heard of, Ben said, his voice rough with emotion. Your mommy must be so proud of you. She tells me I'm her brave girl, Emma said, and Ben could hear the tears in her voice now. But Mr. Benjamin, she needs medicine. She needs help. I don't know what to do anymore. Ben's Mercedes was in the parking garage. He ran to it, still holding the phone to his ear. You don't have to know what to do anymore, sweetheart. I'm 3 minutes away now. I can see Morrison Street. Keep talking to me, Ma. Tell me what your brothers look like. They have yellow hair like me and blue eyes. And Owen has a tiny birthmark on his left cheek shaped like a star. Liam doesn't have any marks. They wear matching clothes because Mommy says twins should match. Ben turned on to Morrison, his eyes scanning the sidewalk. And then he saw her. A little girl, blonde hair tangled and dirty, thin, too thin, standing next to a shopping cart with 2 babies inside. Behind her, incredibly, impossibly, was a grill, smoke rising from potatoes cooking on a street corner. I see you, Emma, Ben said, his voice breaking. I see you. I'm the black Mercedes pulling up right now. Do you see me? I see you. Is that really you? That's me, baby. Ben pulled up to the curb, hazard lights flashing. He didn't care about parking laws. He didn't care about the angry horns from cars behind him. He got out and crossed the sidewalk in 3 long strides. And then he was kneeling in front of her. Emma Bennett, 6 years old, eyes blue as the sky and filled with more pain than any child should carry. Her hands were burnt from the fire. Her face was smudged with soot and tears. She looked up at him, this stranger who had answered her desperate call, and something in her seemed to crumble. You came, she whispered. You really came. Ben reached out and cupped her small, dirty face in his hands. I'm here now. You're safe. And for the first time in months, maybe years, Emma Bennett let herself be a child. She fell into the stranger's arms and finally let herself cry. Ben held her, this tiny girl who had been forced to be so strong for so long, and felt something shift inside his chest. Something he hadn't felt since Sarah died. Purpose, need, the bone-deep certainty that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Behind her, the twins watched with enormous blue eyes, silent in a way that 2-year-olds should never be silent. Ben looked at them over Emma's shaking shoulders, Liam and Owen, matching yellow hair, matching uncertain expressions. Children who had learned that silence was safer than crying. It's okay, Ben murmured, one hand stroking Emma's tangled hair. It's okay now, I've got you. When Emma pulled back, her face was wet with tears, but something in her eyes had changed. Hope, fragile and tentative, but there. Mr. Benjamin, can you really help us? Yes, Ben said simply. Where does your mommy live, Emma? We need to get her help too. 847 Riverside Apartments. Building C, apartment 203. Emma recited it like she'd memorized it for emergencies, which Ben realized she probably had. But Mr. Benjamin, it's not very nice, and Mommy's going to be upset that I bothered a stranger. You didn't bother me, sweetheart. Ben managed to smile. You saved me from a very boring afternoon. Emma's face lit up for the first time. A real smile. Small but genuine. Can we bring the potatoes? I promised Liam and Owen that we'd eat today. Ben looked at the half-cooked potatoes on the grill. His throat tightened. We're absolutely bringing them. And Emma, I promise you something right now. You and your brothers will never go hungry again. Do you believe me? Emma studied his face with eyes that had seen too much for 6 years. Eyes that had learned to read adults, to gauge their truthfulness, to protect herself from disappointment. After a long moment, she nodded. I want to believe you. That's good enough for now. Ben pulled out his phone and dialed his assistant. Richard answered on the first ring. Richard, I need you to cancel everything on my schedule for the rest of the week. Everything? But Mr. Morgan, the Henderson merger? I don't care if they're flying in from Mars. Reschedule it. Ben's voice left no room for argument. And Richard, I need you to call Dr. Samantha Rivera. Tell her it's an emergency, and I need her to make a house call to 847 Riverside Apartments. Building C, apartment 203. Tell her to bring her full medical kit and be prepared for anything. Sir, Dr. Rivera doesn't make house calls anymore. Not since. Tell her I'll donate $5 million to her free clinic if she does this. Tell her a woman is dying and her 6-year-old daughter has been taking care of 2 babies on the street because she has no one else to turn to." There was a pause. Then Richard's voice came back, all business. "I'll call her now. She'll be there within the hour. Make it 30 minutes. Offer 10 million if you have to." Ben hung up and turned to Emma, who was staring at him with wide eyes. 5 million? That's a real amount of money? It is, honey. And your mommy's health is worth a lot more than that. Ben bent down and carefully lifted Owen out of the shopping cart. The little boy was surprisingly heavy, solid, warm. He smelled like baby shampoo and something sour that Ben realized was hunger. "Emma, can you help me get Liam?" Emma nodded eagerly and reached for her other brother. Ben noticed how practiced her movements were, how efficiently she maneuvered the toddler despite being so small herself. This child had been doing this for a long time. "Emma, did you push this shopping cart all the way from your apartment this morning?" "Yes, sir. It's not that far. Only like, I don't know how many blocks. A lot." Ben did some quick mental math. Riverside Apartments was at least 15 blocks from here. This 6-year-old child had pushed a shopping cart containing 2 toddlers 15 blocks before 7 in the morning. "You're incredibly strong," Ben said, his voice thick with emotion. "Come on, let's get everyone in the car." He opened the back door of his Mercedes and realized with a jolt that he had no car seats. Of course he didn't. He didn't have children. He'd never needed car seats. The irony of it almost made him laugh. Here he was, a billionaire who could buy anything, and he couldn't properly secure 3 children in his car. "Okay, new plan," Ben said. "Emma, you sit in the middle of the back seat. Hold Liam on your lap. I'm going to buckle Owen in next to you as tight as I can. Then I'm going to drive very, very carefully." "Can you do that?" "Yes, sir." Ben settled everyone in. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the seatbelt around Emma and Liam. He pulled Owen's belt so tight the little boy made a soft sound of protest. "I'm sorry, buddy," Ben whispered. "Just for a little while." He grabbed the potatoes from the grill, wrapping them in some newspaper from his trunk, and placed them on the floor of the car. Then he folded up the grill itself and stuck it in his trunk along with Emma's cardboard sign. He'd keep that sign forever, Ben decided, as a reminder, as a promise to himself, as proof of the day everything changed. As Ben pulled into traffic, he glanced in the rearview mirror. Emma was watching him with an expression of weary hope, one arm wrapped protectively around Liam. "Mr. Benjamin?" "Yes, Emma." "Thank you for coming." Ben's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His throat burned with unshed tears. "Thank you for calling, sweetheart." The drive to Riverside Apartments took 12 minutes. Each minute felt like an hour. Emma directed him through the streets, her small voice surprisingly steady now. Ben kept glancing in the mirror, checking on them, making sure they were real, making sure this wasn't some fever dream. Riverside Apartments was exactly as depressing as Ben had imagined. A rundown 4-story complex with cracked concrete stairs and graffiti on the walls. The parking lot was full of potholes. Half the windows had sheets or cardboard instead of curtains. Building C was the worst looking of the lot. "That's our building," Emma said, pointing. "Mommy's on the 2nd floor." Ben parked and helped everyone out of the car. As they walked toward the building, he noticed people watching from windows and doorways. A man in a Mercedes wearing a designer suit carrying 2 toddlers, while a small blonde girl led the way. They must have looked bizarre. The stairs to the 2nd floor were steep and smelled like mildew and something worse. Ben held Owen tight, making sure Emma and Liam were right behind him. Apartment 203 had a number that was hanging by one screw. The door was thin enough that Ben could hear someone coughing inside. "Emma, does your mommy know you took the boys out this morning?" Emma looked down at her feet, and Ben had his answer. "No, sir. She was sleeping when we left. I left her a note, but I don't think she can read it yet. My writing's not very good." "Your writing is perfect," Ben said firmly. "Now, should we knock, or do you have a key?" Emma pulled a key on a string from around her neck. Her small hands fumbled with the lock for a moment before Ben gently took it and opened the door. The apartment was dark, curtains drawn tight against the afternoon sun. It smelled like sickness and poverty and desperation. The furniture was old and broken. There was barely any food visible in the tiny kitchen area. But despite everything, the place was relatively clean. Someone had tried to maintain dignity here. "Mommy," Emma called out softly. "Mommy, we're home, and I brought someone to help us." A woman's voice, rough and weak, came from the bedroom. "Emma, baby, where were you? I've been so worried. I tried to call the phone, but..." She appeared in the doorway and Ben's breath caught in his throat. Grace Bennett was 32 years old, but she looked 50. Her dark brown hair was tangled and unwashed. Her green eyes were sunken with exhaustion and pain. She wore sweatpants and a t-shirt that hung loose on what had clearly once been a fuller frame. Her face was pale. Her hands shook as she gripped the doorframe for support. But even ravaged by illness, even at her lowest point, Ben could see that Grace Bennett had once been beautiful. More than that, she had the kind of face that spoke of strength, of determination, of a woman who had fought hard and lost, but was still somehow standing. When she saw Ben holding Owen, her expression cycled through confusion, fear, and something that looked like shame. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice gaining strength from protective instinct. "Emma, get away from him. Now, Tittima." "Mommy, no!" Emma ran to her, wrapping her arms around Grace's legs. "This is Mr. Benjamin. He's nice. He answered when I called you by mistake, and he came to help us." Grace looked down at her daughter, then at Ben, then at the twins. Her face crumpled as an understanding dawned. "You took them out again." "Oh God, Emma, I told you not to do that. I told you I'd figure something out." "But Mommy, you couldn't get up this morning, and Liam and Owen were so hungry." Emma's voice rose with desperation. "I had to do something." Grace's legs seemed to give out. She slid down the doorframe to sit on the floor, her head in her hands. "I'm sorry," she said, and Ben realized she was talking to him. "I'm so sorry you had to see this. I'm not a bad mother. I'm not. I can't." Her voice broke. She started to cry, deep, wrenching sobs that shook her thin frame. Ben carefully set Owen down and crossed the room. He knelt in front of Grace Bennett, looking her straight in those devastated green eyes. "Mrs. Bennett, my name is Benjamin Morgan. Your daughter accidentally called my phone this morning, and I'm very glad she did. I'm here to help, not to judge, but I need you to let me help. Can you do that?" Grace stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. "Help? I don't know who you are, but we don't need charity. We're handling it." "With all due respect, Ms. Bennett, you're not handling it." Ben kept his voice gentle but firm. "Your 6-year-old daughter spent the morning on the street with your infant sons, cooking donated potatoes on a grill she found in a dumpster. That's not handling it. That's survival. And I'm offering you something better than survival." Grace's jaw clenched. Pride and desperation warred in her expression. "I can't pay you back. I can't pay anyone back. I have $23 to my name, and that needs to last until God knows when, because I can't work and I can't get approved for assistance, and I can't. Her voice cracked again. She was shaking now. Not just her hands, her whole body. Ben reached out and took her trembling hand in his. "Then let someone help you. Please. I have a doctor coming here in about—" He checked his watch. "15 minutes. She's going to examine you and figure out exactly what you need, and then we're going to make sure you get it." "Whisper," Grace demanded, tears streaming down her face now. "Why would you do this? You don't know us. Why would you care?" Ben looked at Emma, who was watching them with eyes full of desperate hope. He looked at Liam and Owen, so quiet, so unnaturally still. He looked back at Grace, at this broken woman who was trying so hard to hold her family together with nothing but willpower and love. "Because your daughter called me and said, 'Mommy, we eat on the street.' And something about that broke my heart and put it back together at the same time." Ben paused, choosing his words carefully. "Because I spent my whole life building a perfect career that left me completely empty. I had money, success, respect, and I was miserable. I didn't have anyone who needed me, anyone who loved me for who I was rather than what I could provide. And then Emma called, and for the first time in 3 years since my wife died, I felt necessary. Not because of my business skills or my money, but because I showed up, because I cared." Grace searched his face, looking for the lie, looking for the catch, looking for the inevitable disappointment. Ben held her gaze, letting her see the truth. "I'm scared," she finally whispered. "I know," Ben said. "But Emma was scared this morning too, and she found the courage to call for help. All I'm asking is that you find that same courage." There was a knock at the door. Ben stood and opened it to find Dr. Samantha Rivera, a petite woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She carried a substantial medical bag. "Ben," she said, her voice warm despite the urgency, "I haven't made a house call in 5 years. This better be worth $10 million. "It is, Sam. I promise you it is." Dr. Rivera stepped into the apartment and took in the scene. The thin, pale woman on the floor, the 3 children, the depressing surroundings. Her expression shifted into professional focus. Ms. Bennett, I'm Dr. Rivera. Let's get you on that couch and see what we're dealing with, shall we? As Sam began her examination, Ben pulled Emma aside. Honey, are you hungry? Those potatoes must be cool enough to eat now. Emma nodded eagerly. Ben retrieved the wrapped potatoes and found some plates in the kitchen. Mismatched, chipped, but clean. He divided the food between the three children. They ate like they were starving, because they were. Ben's phone buzzed. A text from Richard. CPS called. Someone reported the Bennett family yesterday. They're planning a visit tomorrow. Ben's blood ran cold. Child Protective Services. If they came and saw this situation, they'd take those children away. They'd separate the family, put them in different foster homes. He looked at Grace, who was answering Dr. Rivera's questions in a weak but determined voice. He looked at Emma, carefully sharing her potato with her brothers, making sure they got more than she did. No, he would not let this family be torn apart, whatever it took, whatever strings he had to pull, whatever laws he had to bend or break. He would not let these children lose their mother. Ben pulled out his phone and texted Richard back. Get me the best family lawyer in Portland. I need them at this apartment within the hour. This is now your only priority. Everything else can wait. Doctor. Rivera finished her examination and gestured for Ben to join her in the narrow hallway outside the apartment. Her expression was grave. Systemic lupus erythematosus, severe case. Without treatment, she's looking at organ failure within the year, maybe sooner. Her kidneys are already showing signs of distress. Ben felt like he'd been punched. And with treatment, it's very treatable. She'll need IV steroids, immunosuppressants, regular monitoring. The good news is her organs aren't as damaged as I feared. With proper care, she should make a full recovery. But Ben, we're talking months of treatment, extensive intervention, and the payton, Sam trailed off. How much? For the first 3 months alone? Probably 80,000, maybe more. Ben didn't even blink. Do it, whatever she needs. Ben, I need to ask, what's your relationship to this family? I don't have one. Not yet, but I'm going to. Sam studied him for a long moment. You know, when you called, I almost said no. I stopped making house calls after the Martinez case, after I couldn't save that little boy. Her voice went quiet, but something in Richard's voice made me come. I'm glad I did. So am I. One more thing, Sam said. Grace needs to be admitted. Today, not tomorrow, today. She needs IV steroids immediately. She needs round-the-clock monitoring. This woman is in crisis. If we don't act now, will she die? Sam hesitated. Not today, maybe not this week, but soon. The question isn't if, it's when. Ben nodded slowly. If I get her admitted today, CPS will definitely take the children. There's already a case open. But if I can establish legal guardianship first, maybe we can keep them together. Can she wait 6 hours? Ben, what are you planning? I'm planning to save this family. Ben looked at Sam. Will she last 6 hours? Sam studied him, then nodded. Yes, but no longer. And Ben, whatever you're about to do, make sure you're ready for it. Taking on someone else's family isn't like acquiring a company. You can't just walk away when it gets complicated. I don't want to walk away, Ben said, and realized with a shock that he meant it. I want to dive in. He went back into the apartment. Grace was lying on the couch, her eyes closed. Emma sat next to her, holding her hand. Liam and Owen played quietly on the floor with some old plastic toys. Ms. Bennett, Ben said gently. Grace, may I call you Grace? She opened her eyes. They were filled with exhaustion and fear. I need to talk to you about something important. Dr. Rivera says you need to be hospitalized. Immediately. But there's a complication. CPS has opened a case. If they come here tomorrow and see this situation while you're in the hospital, they'll take your children. They'll split them up, put them in different foster homes. Grace's face went white. No, they can't. I'm going to make you an offer, Ben continued, and I need you to listen to the whole thing before you answer, okay? Grace nodded, her hand gripping Emma's tighter. I'll pay for all your medical treatment. Everything. Whatever it costs. And while you're getting better, I'm asking for temporary legal guardianship of your children. Not adoption, not permanent. Just long enough to make sure that CP doesn't separate your family while you're in treatment. When you're healthy and stable, we'll transition them back to your full custody. I'll put it all in writing. Legal contract, your rights protected. Grace sat up, quang with dizziness. You want my kids? I want to protect your kids. There's a difference. Ben's voice was steady. There's already a CPS case open. Someone called them yesterday. If they come here and see this, they'll take Emma, Liam, and Owen. They'll put them in different foster homes because nobody takes 3 kids at once, especially not twins and an older sibling. Is that what you want? Of course that's not what I want, Grace's voice broke. But you're a stranger. Why would I give you my children? Because I can keep them together. Because I can make sure they're fed and safe and cared for. Because I can fight CPS with lawyers and money and resources that you don't have right now. Ben paused. And because, Grace, your daughter already trusts me. Look at her, her. They both turned to Emma, who was watching the conversation with serious eyes. Mommy, she said softly, I like Mr. Benjamin. He came when I called. He didn't just walk away like other people. He came. Grace looked at her daughter for a long moment, then at Liam and Owen, then back at Ben. And when I'm better, you'll give them back? The moment you're healthy and stable, we'll transition them back to your care. I'll have lawyers draft an agreement that protects your rights. I swear to you, Grace, this isn't about taking your children. This is about keeping your family together. Grace was quiet for so long that Ben thought she might refuse. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. If I say yes, and you break your promise, it will destroy them. They've lost so much already. I know. Emma's father left us when I was pregnant with the twins. He said he couldn't handle 3 kids, that I was too much trouble. He walked away and never looked back. Grace's voice hardened. So if you're going to walk away too, do it now. Don't wait until they love you. Ben met her eyes. I'm not walking away. I give you my word. Another knock at the door. Ben opened it to find a tall woman in a sharp suit carrying a briefcase. Mr. Morgan, I'm Jennifer Torres. Your assistant said you had an urgent situation. Come in, Jennifer. We have work to do. For the next 2 hours, Jennifer Torres worked what could only be described as legal magic. She drafted temporary guardianship papers, emergency medical consent forms, a detailed agreement outlining Grace's parental rights and the conditions for reunification. Every clause designed to protect this family. Grace read every word, asked 100 questions. Her hands shook as she held the pen. You're sure about this? She asked Ben one final time. I've never been more sure of anything. Grace signed. Her signature was shaky but determined. As the sun began to set, an ambulance arrived to take Grace to Providence Medical Center. Ben had pulled strings, called in favors, greased wheels he didn't even know existed. Grace Bennett would be admitted immediately to one of the best hospitals in Portland. Emma clung to her mother, crying so hard she could barely breathe. I don't want you to go, Mommy. Please don't leave us. Baby girl, I have to get better so I can take care of you again. Grace's own face was wet with tears. And Mr. Benjamin is going to take care of you while I'm gone. Can you be brave for me? I'm tired of being brave. I know, sweetheart. I know, but just a little bit longer. And Emma? Grace cupped her daughter's face. Thank you for calling for help. You saved us. You saved all of us. As the paramedics wheeled Grace out, she caught Ben's hand. Please, she whispered. Please don't let me down. They're everything to me. Everything. I won't, Ben promised. I swear to God I won't. And as he watched the ambulance drive away, 3 children now in his care, Benjamin Morgan realized that his carefully controlled, perfectly planned, emotionally distant life was completely and irrevocably over. The question was, why did that thought make him feel more alive than he had in years? The penthouse had never felt like home to Benjamin Morgan. It had been a showcase, a monument to success. 40 floors above the city, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River, 4,000 square feet of carefully curated emptiness. Every piece of furniture chosen by a designer, every surface cold and perfect. It had been featured in Architectural Digest twice. People called it spectacular. Ben called it lonely. But that first night, with 3 children sleeping in his guest room, the penthouse felt different. It felt occupied. It felt needed. Emma had fallen asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the day's trauma. But every hour Ben had checked on them, watching their small chests rise and fall, making sure they were real, making sure he hadn't imagined the whole thing. At 3 in the morning, he'd found Emma standing in the doorway of his bedroom, silent tears streaming down her face. I had an accident, she whispered, shame thick in her voice. I'm sorry, I ruined your sheets. You're going to send us away now. Ben had knelt down, his heart breaking for this child who had been forced to be so strong, who had been taught that mistakes meant abandonment. Emma, honey, sheets can be washed. They can be replaced. But you can't be replaced. You're infinitely more valuable than any sheets. Do you understand? She'd looked at him with those serious blue eyes, searching for the lie. When she didn't find one, she'd nodded. And then for the first time, she'd hugged him. Really hugged him, burying her face in his shoulder and holding on like he was the only solid thing in a world that had tried to sweep her away. Ben had held her and thought about Sarah, about how she would have loved this child, how she would have known exactly what to say, what to do, how she would have made it look easy. He didn't find it easy, but he found it necessary. And maybe that was enough. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the penthouse at 6. He'd been Ben's business partner, his CFO, his right hand for 12 years. They'd built Morgan Tech Solutions from nothing. Marcus knew Ben better than anyone alive, which is why he stood in the doorway of the guest room, watching Ben make pancakes for 3 children, and didn't say a word. He just observed, taking it all in. Emma sat at the kitchen island, carefully cutting her brother's pancakes into tiny pieces, blowing on them to cool them down, making airplane noises to get Liam to eat, the practiced efficiency of a child who had been a mother too long. Marcus, Ben said without turning around, coffee's in the pot. Ben, Marcus replied carefully, we need to talk. I know. The Henderson deal fell through. They're going with Techline instead. 500 million gone. Ben flipped a pancake. Okay. Okay, that's it? Just okay? Marcus's voice rose slightly. Ben, the board is furious. Robert Hutchinson is calling for an emergency meeting. He wants you out. Then we'll deal with it. Marcus moved closer, lowering his voice so the children couldn't hear. Ben, what are you doing? Who are these kids? Ben turned to face his friend. They're mine now, for a while anyway. And Marcus, I know you think I've lost my mind. Maybe I have. But this is the first time in 3 years that I've felt like I have a reason to get up in the morning. Marcus looked at him. Really looked. And what he saw made him pause. The deadness that had lived in Ben's eyes since Sarah died. It was gone, replaced by something fierce and protective and alive. Tell me what you need, Marcus said finally. I need you to handle the board. Tell them I'm taking 2 weeks. Tell them it's non-negotiable. And Marcus, start looking at houses, family homes. This Pennant house isn't going to work. 2 weeks later, Ben signed the papers on a house in Laurelhurst. 4 bedrooms, craftsman style, a yard with an old oak tree perfect for a swing. Walking distance to Riverview Elementary. $1.2 million that Ben paid in cash without blinking. The real estate agent had been confused. Mr. Morgan, don't you want to see more options? This is the first house we looked at. It has a yard where children can play, Ben had said. That's all I need to know. Moving day was chaos. Emma was excited in a way Ben hadn't seen before. She ran through the empty rooms, her footsteps echoing, her laughter genuine. Liam and Owen toddled after her, their matching blonde heads bobbing as they explored. This is ours? Emma kept asking. Really ours? Really yours, Ben confirmed each time. The furniture arrived. Beds shaped like race cars for the twins. A purple room with glow-in-the-dark stars for Emma. She'd stood in the doorway of her new room and cried. Not sad tears, something else. Something that looked like relief. I've never had my own room before, she'd whispered. We all slept in Mommy's bed to keep warm. Ben had to turn away, his own eyes burning. How many things had these children never had? How many small dignities had poverty stolen from them? That night, Ben tucked Emma into her new bed. The stars glowed softly overhead. Mr. Benjamin? Yes, Emma? When Mommy comes home, will we stay here? Or will we go back to the apartment? Ben sat on the edge of her bed. When your mommy comes home, she'll stay here too. This is your home now. Love you. But you said temporary. You said when Mommy's better, we'd go back to her. I said we'd transition back to her primary custody. That's different. Emma, do you know what a family is? She thought about it. People who are related? Sometimes, but I think family is the people who show up, who stay, who choose each other. Ben smoothed her hair back. Your mommy and I will figure out the details. But I promise you, kiddo, you're not losing anyone. You're only gaining. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then in a small voice, can I call you something besides Mr. Benjamin? It's so long. What would you like to call me? Can I call you Ben? Like Uncle Ben? Something in Ben's chest cracked open. I'd be honored. 2 days after they moved into the house, Grace was released from the hospital. Ben brought the children to pick her up. The transformation was remarkable. Grace still looked tired, still moved carefully, but the grayness was gone from her skin. Her eyes were clear. She could stand without swaying. When Emma saw her mother walking out of the hospital entrance, actually walking on her own, she ran. Ben had never seen a child move so fast. She slammed into Grace's legs, wrapping her arms around her waist, sobbing. "Mommy, you're walking! You're really walking!" Grace held her daughter, tears streaming down her own face. "I told you I'd get better, baby girl." The drive back to Laurelhurst was quiet. Grace sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window at the city she'd always known but rarely seen from this angle. From the inside of a luxury car, from the perspective of someone who wasn't just surviving. When they pulled up to the house, Grace didn't move. She just stared. "This is where they've been staying?" "This is where you'll all be staying," Ben corrected gently. "Come on, let me show you." He'd prepared a room for her on the first floor, the master bedroom, large windows overlooking the garden, a bathroom with a soaking tub, soft sheets on a bed that probably cost more than she'd earned in a year. Grace stood in the doorway, one hand pressed to her mouth. "Ben, this is too much. I can't accept this." "You already did. You signed the papers, remember?" Ben kept his voice light, but his eyes were serious. "Grace, you and your kids deserve better than what you had. This isn't charity. This isn't me playing savior. This is me keeping a promise." "But why?" Her voice broke. "I still don't understand why you're doing this." Ben had asked himself that question 100 times in the past 2 weeks. He tried to make it logical, tried to find the rational explanation. But the truth was simpler and more complicated than any logic. "Because I lost my chance at family, and you're giving me a second one." That evening, they had dinner together, all 5 of them around the kitchen table. Spaghetti, garlic bread, salad, nothing fancy, but there was enough, more than enough. Emma ate slowly, savoring each bite. Grace kept looking around like she was waiting for someone to tell her this was all a mistake, that she'd wake up back in the apartment with no food and no hope. Owen pointed at Ben and said clearly, "Dada." The table went silent. Grace's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Emma looked between Ben and her mother, worried. "Owen, honey, that's Uncle Ben," Emma tried to correct, but Owen shook his head stubbornly. "Dada." Ben felt his throat tighten. He looked at Grace, trying to read her expression. She was staring at him with something complicated in her eyes. "It's okay," Grace said finally. "They don't remember David. As far as they're concerned," she trailed off. "As far as they're concerned, Ben is their father," Emma finished quietly. Nobody corrected her. That night, after the children were asleep, Ben and Grace sat in the living room. The house was quiet in a way Ben's penthouse had never been. This was a full quiet, a content quiet. "I need to ask you something," Grace said, "and I need you to be honest. Anything. Are you doing this because you feel guilty about something, about your wife?" Ben thought about Sarah, about the promises he'd made, about the life they'd never gotten to live. "Maybe partly," he admitted. "Sarah wanted children. We kept putting it off. Career first, we said. We had time, we said. Then we didn't." He paused. "But Grace, that's not why I'm keeping you here. I'm keeping you here because when I look at Emma, I see the strongest kid I've ever met. When I look at those twins, I see innocence that deserves to protection. And when I look at you, I see someone who fought like hell to keep her family together against impossible odds." "I failed them," Grace whispered. "You kept them alive. Do you know how many people couldn't have done that? You're not a failure, Grace. You're a warrior." Grace looked down at her hands. "The board meeting. Marcus told me about it. About the deal you lost. About Robert Hutchinson wanting you out. Marcus talks too much. Are you going to lose your company because of us?" "I don't know, maybe. Probably not. Robert's been trying to push me out for years." Ben leaned forward. "But Grace, even if I did lose the company, it would be worth it. That company is just money. You and those kids, you're real." Grace met his eyes. And Ben saw something shift in her expression, something that made his heart beat faster. "You're not what I expected," she said softly. "What did you expect?" "Someone who'd get bored, someone who'd realize this was harder than they thought, someone who'd walk away." "I'm not walking away." The emergency board meeting happened 3 days later. Ben drove into the city, leaving Grace and the children at home with a nanny he'd hired. A kind woman named Sarah Martinez, who had 20 years of experience and a grandmother's warmth. The boardroom felt different this time. Hostile. Robert Hutchinson sat at the head of the table like he already owned the place. 6 other board members flanked him. Only 3 looked uncertain. Marcus sat to Ben's right, his face carefully neutral. "Benjamin," Robert began, his voice dripping with false civility. "Thank you for joining us. I know you've been busy with your new project." "Say what you mean, Robert." Robert's smile sharpened. "Fine. You abandoned a $500 million deal to play house with a homeless family. A woman you don't know, and 3 children who aren't yours. The media is having a field day. Our investors are nervous, and frankly, your judgment is in question." Ben looked around the table. "Anyone else want to pile on?" Silence. Then Margaret Chen, a board member who'd been with the company from the start, spoke up. "Ben, we're worried, not about your judgment, about you. This is a massive commitment. Are you sure you know what you're getting into?" "No," Ben said honestly. "I have no idea what I'm getting into, but I'm doing it anyway." "Why, Bob?" Robert demanded. "Give us one good reason why we should keep you as CEO when you're clearly distracted." Ben pulled out his tablet and brought up a presentation. "Here's your reason. Revenue is up 15% this quarter. Our AI division is ahead of schedule and under budget. Client satisfaction scores are the highest they've been in 3 years. Employee retention has improved. Every metric that matters is trending up." He let that sink in. "You want to know why? Because for the first time in 3 years, I have something to come home to. Something that matters more than the next deal. And that perspective has made me better at my job. Not worse." "This is absurd," Robert sputtered. "What happens when you get tired of playing father, when the reality sets in and you realize you've taken on someone else's problems?" Ben stood. "Then I'll deal with it. But Robert, let me be clear. I'm not playing at anything. Those children are under my legal guardianship. Their mother is recovering under my care, and I will do whatever it takes to protect them, including walking away from this company if I have to." The room went dead silent. "But here's what you need to understand," Ben continued. "I built this company, me and Marcus, from nothing. And I can do it again, with or without this board, with or without any of you. So if you want to vote me out, go ahead, but I won't make it easy, and I won't make it clean." Margaret spoke again. "I move that we table this discussion. Ben has proven his performance hasn't suffered. His personal life is his own business. All in favor?" 7 hands went up. Robert and 3 others abstained. It was enough. "Motion carries," Margaret said. "Ben stays. This meeting is adjourned." As the board members filed out, Robert stopped beside Ben's chair. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "One mistake, one scandal. That's all it takes. Then I won't make any mistakes." Ben drove home in the late afternoon sun, his hands steady on the wheel. He'd won. Barely, but he'd won. When he pulled into the driveway, Emma was in the front yard. She'd been playing with sidewalk chalk. The moment she saw his car, she ran to him. "Uncle Ben! Uncle Ben! I drew you a picture!" It was a stick figure family. 5 people holding hands. He recognized Emma's blonde hair, the twins' matching figures, Grace's longer form, and himself tall beside them. "That's us," Emma said proudly. "That's our family." Ben looked at the drawing, at this child's simple, profound understanding of what they'd become. "It's perfect, Emma. It's absolutely perfect." That night after dinner, there was a knock at the door. Ben opened it to find Patricia Walsh, the CPS caseworker. She'd called ahead, scheduling this visit. Ben had been prepared for days. "Mr. Morgan," Patricia said professionally, "I'm here for the home inspection." "Of course, come in." Patricia spent 2 hours at the house. She interviewed Emma separately, checked the children's rooms, looked at the food in the pantry, observed how Ben and Grace interacted with the kids. When she was done, she sat at the kitchen table with Ben and Grace. "This is unusual," Patricia said carefully. "A billionaire CEO taking in a homeless family. Quick legal arrangements. It raises questions." "What kind of questions?" Grace asked, her voice tight with fear. "About motivations, about appropriateness, about whether this situation is in the children's best interest." Patricia looked between them. "But I'll be honest, I've been doing this job for 18 years. I've seen real abuse, real neglect, real predatory behavior. This?" She gestured around. "This isn't that." Ben felt relief wash over him, but Patricia wasn't done. However, I'm going to require monthly check-ins for the next 6 months. And Mr. Morgan, Mrs. Bennett, I need to be very clear. Any romantic involvement between you two will require an immediate review of this arrangement. The perception of impropriety could jeopardize everything. Do you understand? We understand, Ben said. After Patricia left, Ben and Grace sat in the kitchen. The children were asleep. The house was quiet again. She's right to be concerned, Grace said softly. This does look strange. Rich man, poor woman, sudden arrangement. Do you trust me? Ben asked. Yes, that's what scares me. What do you mean? Grace looked at him, and Ben saw vulnerability in her eyes that hadn't been there before. I mean, I'm starting to feel things I shouldn't feel. And I know you are too. Don't pretend you're not. Ben's heart hammered in his chest. Grace, we can't, she said firmly, even as her eyes said something different. We can't do this. Not with CPS watching. Not with your board looking for reasons to remove you. Not when my children's safety depends on keeping this professional. You're right, Ben said, even though every cell in his body wanted to argue. But Ben? Grace stood up, moving to the doorway. She paused, looking back at him. When this is all settled, when the dust clears, when no one can take my children away. She took a breath. Ask me then. She left before he could respond. Ben sat in the empty kitchen, his mind racing. He'd spent 3 years dead inside. And now, in the space of 3 weeks, this woman and her children had brought him back to life. The question was, could he wait? Could he keep his distance when every instinct told him to move closer? He was still sitting there when his phone rang, unknown number. He almost didn't answer, then remembered that Emma had called from an unknown number, that sometimes unknown meant important. Hello? Is this Benjamin Morgan? The voice was male, rough, unfamiliar. Yes. Who's this? My name is David Bennett. I'm calling about my children. Ben went cold. Your children? Emma, Liam, and Owen. I read about you in the news, about how you're playing hero with my family. The man's voice hardened. I want them back. I'm their father. I have rights. Ben's hand tightened on the phone. You abandoned them 3 years ago. I was young, scared, I made mistakes. But I'm ready now, and I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you, I want my kids back, and I'm getting a lawyer. The line went dead. Ben sat in the dark kitchen, staring at his phone. Just when everything seemed to be settling. Just when they'd started to feel like a family. David Bennett had reappeared, and Ben knew with bone-deep certainty that the real fight was just beginning. Upstairs, Emma slept peacefully in her purple room, unaware that the father who'd abandoned her was back, unaware that the fragile stability they'd built was about to be tested. Ben looked at the stick figure drawing Emma had made, the family holding hands. I won't let him take you, Ben whispered to the empty room. I don't care what it costs. I won't let anyone break this family apart. Outside, the autumn wind picked up, leaves skittered across the driveway, and somewhere in the city, David Bennett was making plans. Plans that would force Ben to choose between following the rules and protecting the people he'd come to love. The easy part was over. Now came the war. David Bennett arrived on a Tuesday morning. Ben was making breakfast. Pancakes again. Emma had requested them specifically, and Ben had discovered that making pancakes for children who appreciated them was oddly satisfying. Grace was setting the table, moving with the careful deliberateness of someone still rebuilding strength. The twins were in their high chairs, babbling to each other in their own language. It felt like a family. It felt like home. Then the doorbell rang. Ben wiped his hands on a towel and went to answer it. Through the glass panel beside the door, he could see a man, tall, early 30s, handsome in a rough way that spoke of physical labor and harder living. He wore jeans and a leather jacket. His dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail. Ben opened the door. Can I help you? The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm looking for Grace Bennett. I believe she's staying here. Something in Ben's gut tightened. And you are? David Bennett. I'm her husband. Well, ex-husband. And the father of her children. Behind Ben, he heard Grace's sharp intake of breath. He turned to see her standing in the hallway, one hand pressed to the wall for support. Her face had gone pale. David, she whispered, what are you doing here? David's smile widened. I came to see my kids, Grace. That's allowed, isn't it? Emma appeared beside her mother. When she saw David, she didn't run to him. She didn't smile. She moved behind Grace, gripping her mother's shirt. Go away, Emma said, her small voice hard. You left us. David's expression flickered. Something that might have been shame crossed his face before it hardened into something else. Emma, baby, I know I messed up, but I'm here now. Daddy's here now. You're not my daddy, Emma said. You left when we needed you. David looked past Ben at Grace. Can we talk? Privately? Ben stepped into the doorway, blocking David's view. I think you should leave. I think you should mind your own business, David shot back. Those are my kids in there, my family. You're just some rich guy playing hero. I'm the person who was there when Grace collapsed, when Emma was taking care of two babies on the street, when your family needed someone. Ben kept his voice level, but there was steel underneath. Where were you? David's jaw clenched. I was young, scared. I made mistakes, but I'm ready now. I'm their father. I have rights. Rights? Grace's voice came from behind Ben, stronger than he'd heard it in weeks. She moved to stand beside Ben, her green eyes blazing. You gave up your rights when you walked out, when you left me pregnant and terrified, when you never sent a dime of support, when you let your children go hungry while you did God knows what. I want to make it right, David said. I want another chance. No, Grace's voice didn't waver. You don't get to come back now, not after 3 years, not after everything. David's friendly mask dropped completely. I wasn't asking for permission, Grace. I'm telling you, I want my kids back, and I'm getting a lawyer. He turned and walked away. Ben watched him get into a beat-up truck and drive off. When he turned back, Grace was shaking, not from weakness this time, from rage and fear mixed together. He's going to try to take them, she said. He's going to use the fact that I'm sick, that you're not their father. He's going to destroy everything we've built. Emma was crying now, silent tears running down her cheeks. I don't want to go with him. Please don't make me go with him. Ben knelt down, pulling Emma into his arms. You're not going anywhere you don't want to go. I promise you that. But even as he said it, he wondered if it was a promise he could keep. Jennifer Torres arrived within the hour. Ben had called her the moment David drove away. She sat in the living room, legal pad in hand, her expression grave. This is bad, she said without preamble. David has biological rights. As the father, he has standing to petition for custody. And Grace, I'm sorry, but your recent hospitalization works against us. I'm recovering, Grace protested. Dr. Rivera says I'm doing well. I know, but a judge will see a single mother with a serious chronic illness. They'll see that she was recently homeless, that her children were on the street. Jennifer's voice was gentle but honest. And they'll see David as a biological parent who wants to be involved now. He wants money, Ben said flatly. He read about me in the news. He sees dollar signs. Can you prove that? Not yet. Jennifer tapped her pen against her pad. Here's what we need to do. First, we document everything. Grace's recovery, the children's stability here, Emma's school performance. Second, we investigate David. Find out where he's been, what he's been doing, any criminal record, any evidence he's not fit to parent. I'll hire someone, Ben said. A private investigator, the best. Good, because Ben, I need you to understand something. In family court, biology matters a lot. We're going to have to prove not just that you can provide better for these children, which is obvious, but that David is actively harmful. That's a higher bar. Grace put her head in her hands. This is my fault. If I'd been stronger, if I'd been able to work, if I hadn't gotten sick. Stop, Ben said firmly. This is David's fault, not yours. You did everything you could. But Grace shook her head. You don't understand. When David left, I was so angry. But part of me always wondered if he'd come back, if he'd changed, and now he has. And I realize I don't want him back. I don't want him anywhere near my children. Then we'll fight, Jennifer said. We'll fight hard. But Grace, Ben, you both need to be prepared. This could get ugly. David will attack your character. He'll make this about Ben taking advantage, about the relationship between you two. Ben and Grace carefully didn't look at each other. There is no relationship, Grace said. Ben is their guardian. I'm recovering, that's all. Jennifer's eyes were too knowing. Make sure it stays that way until this is resolved. Any hint of impropriety and we lose. The private investigator Ben hired was named Anthony Reeves, 60 years old, former FBI, built like a bull and twice as stubborn. Within 3 days, he had a file an inch thick on David Bennett. He spread it across Ben's desk at Morgan Tech. Ben had come into the office for the first time in 2 weeks. The company was running smoothly under Marcus's guidance, but there were decisions that needed Ben's signature. David Michael Bennett, Anthony began, 35 years old, High school dropout, no college, worked construction on and off for the past decade, currently unemployed. Criminal record? Ben asked. 3 DUs in the past 5 years. 2 bar fights resulting in assault charges, both dismissed. 1 domestic disturbance call from an ex-girlfriend 2 years ago, no charges filed. Anthony pulled out another sheet. But here's the interesting part, his bank records. How did you get those? Anthony smiled slightly. You don't want to know, but look at this. 2 weeks ago, he received a wire transfer, $10,000, from an LLC that doesn't seem to do anything except hold money. Who owns the LLC? Still tracking that down, but Ben, there's more. I've found his current girlfriend, woman named Crystal Martinez. She was very forthcoming once I explained the situation. According to her, David has been planning this for weeks, ever since he saw the news article about you and Grace. Ben's hands clenched. He's not here for the kids. No, he's here for a payoff. Crystal said he told her, and I quote, "That rich bastard will pay me to go away. Easy money. Couple million at least." Can she testify to that? She's willing. She's also willing to testify that David has a gambling problem, that he's in debt to some very unpleasant people, that he's desperate. Ben felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. Get me everything, every debt, every person he owes, every lie he's ever told. I want to bury him. Anthony nodded. One more thing. I looked into his past, found his first wife, before Grace. Did you know he was married before? Ben hadn't. Neither had Grace. Her name is Rachel Torres. They were married for 2 years. She left him after he hit her during an argument, filed a restraining order. It expired 5 years ago, but the record exists. Did Grace know about any of this? I doubt it. According to Rachel, David was very good at hiding his violent side until he wasn't. Ben stood up, his decision made. Set up a meeting with Rachel. I want to hear her story. And Anthony, find out who sent that $10,000. Follow the money. The court date was set for 3 weeks out. David filed for emergency custody, claiming the children were in danger with a stranger. The judge denied the emergency petition, but scheduled a full hearing. In the meantime, life continued. Emma went to school every day. Ben drove her, picked her up, helped with homework. Attended a parent-teacher conference where Mrs. Patterson said Emma was thriving, that she'd gone from withdrawn and anxious to engaged and happy. Whatever you're doing, Mrs. Patterson said, keep doing it. This child is blossoming. But Emma knew about the court date. She knew David was trying to take them. She'd grown quiet again, watchful. The nightmares had returned. One night, Ben heard her crying. He went to her room, found her sitting up in bed, tears streaming down her face. I heard Mommy talking on the phone, Emma whispered. She was crying. She said she might lose us. Ben sat on the edge of her bed. And Mama, look at me. Do you trust me? She nodded. Then trust this. I am going to do everything in my power to keep this family together. Everything. Do you understand? But what if the judge says we have to go with David? What if the judge doesn't believe us? Then I'll appeal. And if that doesn't work, I'll fight harder. Emma, I'm not giving up. Not now. Not ever. Emma threw her arms around his neck. I love you, Uncle Ben. Ben's throat closed. I love you too, kiddo. He'd never said those words to a child before. Never thought he'd have the chance. And now, saying them to this brave, broken, healing little girl, he meant them more than he'd meant anything in his life. The day before the hearing, Rachel Torres agreed to meet Ben and Jennifer at a coffee shop in Northeast Portland. She was 38, dark hair, tired eyes. She worked as a dental hygienist and had remarried 5 years ago. I wondered if David would surface again, she said, stirring her coffee. He always does, when he needs something. Tell me about your marriage, Jennifer said gently. Rachel took a breath. David can be charming. When you first meet him, he's funny, attentive, romantic. I fell hard. We got married 6 months after we met. I thought I knew him. What changed? He started drinking more, gambling. We fought about money constantly. Then one night we had an argument about his debt. He'd taken out a credit card in my name without telling me. I confronted him. She paused. He hit me, open-handed across the face. Then he cried, apologized, swore it would never happen again. But it did, Ben said quietly, 3 more times over the next year. Each time, more apologies, more promises. I finally left when he put me in the hospital with a concussion. Filed a restraining order, divorced him. Did you ever want children with him? Jennifer asked. Rachel shook her head vehemently. Thank God, no. David didn't want kids, said they were too much responsibility, too expensive. When I heard he'd gotten another woman pregnant, I was shocked. And when I heard he'd abandoned her and 3 kids, her voice hardened. I wasn't surprised. Would you be willing to testify, Ben asked, about the Ebbus, about the kind of man he is? Rachel met his eyes. Absolutely. Those kids deserve better than David Bennett. The courtroom was smaller than Ben expected. Judge Martha Brennan presided. She was in her late 50s with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She'd been on the family court bench for 20 years. David sat on one side with his attorney, Richard Blackwood. Blackwood was in his 40s, slick, expensive suit, the kind of lawyer who made his money getting deadbeat parents their rights back. Ben, Grace, and Jennifer sat on the other side. Grace wore a simple dress. Her hair was pulled back. She looked healthy but nervous. Ben wore a suit but had deliberately chosen one of his more modest ones. Jennifer had warned him not to look too wealthy, too powerful. It could work against them. Judge Brennan looked over her reading glasses at both parties. This is a petition for custody modification filed by Mr. David Bennett regarding 3 minor children, Emma, Liam, and Owen Bennett. Let's begin. Mr. Blackwood, your opening statement. Blackwood stood. Your Honor, this is a simple case. Mr. Bennett is the biological father of these 3 children. He admits he made mistakes in the past. He was young, overwhelmed, and made the regrettable decision to leave. But he's grown, he's matured, and he's ready to be the father his children deserve. He gestured toward Ben. What we have here is a wealthy man who swooped in and essentially purchased this family. Mr. Morgan has no biological connection to these children, no legal adoption, just temporary guardianship obtained during a crisis. Meanwhile, Mr. Bennett, the children's actual father, has been systematically excluded from their lives. Judge Brennan turned to Jennifer. Ms. Torres? Jennifer stood. Your Honor, Mr. Blackwood's characterization is inaccurate. Mr. Bennett didn't make a regrettable decision. He abandoned 3 children, including newborn twins, leaving their mother with no support, no money, and no help. For 3 years, he provided nothing. No child support, no contact, nothing. Ms. Bennett ended up homeless and desperately ill. Her 6-year-old daughter was forced to care for infant brothers on the street. Mr. Morgan didn't purchase this family. He saved them. He provided medical care that Mrs. Bennett couldn't afford. He's given these children stability for the first time in their lives. And Mr. Bennett, the judge asked, what's his motivation for returning now? Money, Your Honor. We have evidence that Mr. Bennett's sudden interest in fatherhood coincides exactly with news coverage of Mr. Morgan's involvement. We believe this is an extortion attempt. Blackwood jumped up. Objection! That's a serious accusation with no basis. We'll see about that, Jennifer said calmly. We have witnesses. The first day of testimony was brutal. David took the stand and played his part perfectly. He was contrite, apologetic. He claimed he'd been struggling with depression after the twins were born, that he'd made a terrible mistake leaving, that he'd been in therapy, that he was ready to be a father. I think about my kids every day, David said, his voice breaking slightly. I know I failed them. But people can change. I've changed, and I'm begging this court for a chance to prove it. On cross-examination, Jennifer went for the throat. Mr. Bennett, you say you think about your children every day. How much child support have you paid in the 3 years since you left? I haven't been able to. I've been struggling financially. Yet you found money to gamble. You have 3 DUI arrests, bar tabs. How much would you estimate you've spent on alcohol in the past 3 years? David shifted uncomfortably. I don't know. More than 0, though. More than you spent on your children. I was in a bad place. And 2 weeks ago, you received a wire transfer of $10,000. Where did that money come from? David's lawyer stood. Objection. Relevance. Your Honor, it goes to motive, Jennifer argued. I'll allow it. Mr. Bennett, answer the question. David hesitated. A friend loaned it to me. What friend? I don't remember his name. You don't remember the name of someone who loaned you $10,000? It was a casual thing. Jennifer smiled thinly. We'll come back to that. Mr. Bennett, were you previously married? Yes. To Rachel Torres? David's face went pale. Yes. And why did that marriage end? We grew apart. Is that all? There wasn't a restraining order filed against you? Blackwood stood again. Your Honor, that restraining order is years old and not relevant to this case. It's relevant to Mr. Bennett's character, Jennifer countered. Your Honor, we have Ms. Torres here to testify. Judge Brennan considered. I'll allow it, but keep it focused, Miss Torres. When Rachel took the stand, her testimony was devastating. She described the abuse, the violence, the cycle of apologies and repetition. David sat stone-faced, but Ben could see the tension in his jaw. Did Mr. Bennett ever express interest in having children during your marriage? Jennifer asked. No, he said children were a burden. Too expensive. Too much responsibility. Yet he's here now claiming he desperately wants custody of 3 children he abandoned. Objection! Blackwood was on his feet, argumentative. Sustained, the judge said. Move on, Ms. Torres. Grace testified next. She was nervous but steady. She described the abandonment, the struggle, the desperate poverty. Emma taking care of the twins while Grace lay dying from an illness she couldn't afford to treat. Ms. Bennett, Blackwood said on cross-examination, you were homeless. Your children were on the street. A 6-year-old caring for babies. Would you call that good parenting? Grace's face flushed. I call it survival. But wouldn't the children have been better off if you'd given them up, put them in foster care, where they'd be properly fed and housed? I kept my family together, Grace said fiercely. Against impossible odds, I kept them together. Because you were too proud to ask for help? Because the system fails people like me? Because I knew if I lost them, I'd never get them back? Then it was Ben's turn. He took the stand, aware of every eye in the courtroom. Judge Brennan studied him with particular intensity. Jennifer led him through his testimony, how Emma had called him by accident, his decision to help, the medical care he'd arranged for Grace, the legal guardianship. Mr. Morgan, Jennifer asked, why did you take on this responsibility? You're a successful businessman. You could have simply written a check. Ben looked at the judge. Because my wife died 3 years ago. We never had children. She made me promise I wouldn't close my heart, that I'd help others. When Emma called me, I heard Sarah's voice telling me this was what she meant. Do you love these children? Yes, more than I thought possible. Are you seeking to replace their father? No, I'm seeking to be what they need, a protector, a provider, a constant. Blackwood's cross-examination was aggressive. Mr. Morgan, you're worth approximately $2 billion, correct? Approximately. And you've spent significant money on this family. Housing, medical care, legal fees. How much total would you estimate? I don't know, I haven't kept track. Over $1 million? Probably. Isn't it true that you're essentially buying this family? That you're using your wealth to override Mr. Bennett's parental rights? No, I'm using my resources to protect children who were abandoned. You have no children of your own, no experience parenting. What makes you qualified? I show up, Ben said simply. Every day, I'm there. That's more than David Bennett can say. You're not their father, Bishop. No, but I'm what they have, and I'll fight like hell to keep them safe. The courtroom went silent. Judge Brennan made a note. Then came Emma's testimony. The judge called a recess first, bringing Emma into chambers privately. Ben wanted to be there, but the judge denied his request. Grace was allowed to accompany Emma as her parent. When they emerged 20 minutes later, Grace was crying. Emma looked exhausted but resolute. In open court, Judge Brennan addressed David directly. Mr. Bennett, I've spoken with your daughter. She's made her wishes very clear. She does not want to live with you. She does not want visitation. She's expressed fear of you. David's face flushed. She doesn't understand. She's been poisoned against me. Your Honor, Jennifer interjected, we also have testimony from Emma's teacher, her pediatrician, and a child psychologist who's evaluated her. All of them confirm that Emma's preference is genuine and based on her own experiences, not manipulation. Judge Brennan held up a hand. I've read all the reports, and I have to say, this is one of the most clear-cut cases I've seen. Mr. Bennett, you abandoned 3 children, you provided no support, you made no contact, and you reappeared only when a wealthy man entered the picture. Your Honor, I loved my kids. If you loved them, you wouldn't have left them to starve. If you loved them, you would have found a way to help, even if you couldn't be there physically. The judge's voice was hard. The evidence shows you have a history of violence, of gambling, of substance abuse, and frankly, I believe Ms. Torres when she says this is about money. She turned to her clerk. I'm ready to rule. The courtroom held its breath. Mr. Bennett, your petition for custody is denied. Furthermore, I'm terminating your parental rights. You forfeited those rights through your abandonment and your continued failure to provide for your children. David stood up. You can't do that. I just did. Sit down, Mr. Bennett. The judge looked at Ben and Grace. Mrs. Bennett will retain full custody. Mr. Morgan's guardianship is expanded to co-guardianship with full parental rights. Effectively, Mr. Morgan, you are now these children's legal father. Ben felt like the ground had shifted under him. Legal father. This arrangement will be permanent unless Ms. Bennett chooses to modify it. Mr. David Bennett, you are entitled to supervised visitation once per quarter at the discretion of Mrs. Bennett. If you miss 2 consecutive visits, that right will be revoked. Do you understand? David was red-faced, shaking with rage. This is bullshit. You're giving my kids to a stranger because he's rich. No, Mr. Bennett, I'm giving these children stability with people who've proven they'll put the children first. You had 3 years to prove yourself. You didn't. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. David stormed out, his lawyer scrambling to follow. Ben sat frozen, trying to process what had just happened. Grace turned to him, tears streaming down her face. You did it. You saved them. We did it, Ben corrected. Together. Outside the courthouse, Emma was waiting with the nanny who'd been watching her and the twins during the testimony. When she saw Ben and Grace emerge, she ran. Did we win? Can we stay? Ben knelt down, pulling her into his arms. You can stay, kiddo. Forever. The judge said so. Emma burst into tears, not sad tears, relief, joy, the release of 3 years of fear. He can't take us? He can't make us go? No, never. Emma held on to him and Ben held on to her, and Grace wrapped her arms around both of them. And there, on the courthouse steps, they became what they'd been building toward all along, a family. 2 years later, Ben stood in the backyard of their Laurelhurst home, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and gold. The yard had changed since they'd moved in. There was a swing set now, a sandbox, a vegetable garden that Grace had planted. Evidence of life everywhere you looked. Inside, he could hear laughter. Emma was 8 now, confident, happy, thriving in school. She'd started piano lessons and discovered she had talent. Liam and Owen were 4, talking in complete sentences, arguing over toys like normal brothers. The front door opened. Grace came out onto the patio carrying 2 glasses of wine. She'd made a full recovery. Her lupus was in remission, carefully managed with medication. She'd gone back to school, was getting a degree in social work, wanted to help other families like hers. She was also, as of 6 months ago, Grace Morgan. They'd waited a full year after the court case, made sure everything was stable, made sure the children were secure. Then one evening, Ben had taken her to Sarah's grave. Sarah, he'd said, kneeling by the headstone, I found what you wanted for me. I found family. I found purpose. I found love. Thank you for pushing me. Thank you for not letting me stay empty. He'd turned to Grace, pulled out a ring, a simple band with a single diamond. I was lost. You and your kids found me. Will you marry me? Grace had said yes through tears. Emma had been there, hiding behind a tree, watching. She'd run out cheering. The wedding had been small, just family. Marcus as best man, Emma as maid of honor. The twins as ring bearers who'd mostly just chased each other around. Judge Brennan had attended, smiling the whole time. And now, standing in their backyard, Ben felt something he hadn't felt in 5 years. Complete. Grace handed him a glass of wine. Penny for your thoughts? Just thinking about how lucky I am. We're the lucky ones, Grace said softly. You saved us. We saved each other. His phone rang. Unknown number. Ben had learned to always answer unknown numbers. You never knew who might need help. Hello? Is this Benjamin Morgan? A young voice, female, scared. Ben straightened. Yes, who's this? My name is Sophie. I'm 9. I found your foundation's number online. My mom is sick, and we don't have money for medicine, and I'm scared, and I don't know what to do. Ben felt that familiar tightening in his chest, that call to action. Sophie, where are you? Grace was watching him, understanding dawning on her face. She nodded. I'm in Seattle. We're staying in a shelter, but they're kicking us out tomorrow. Sophie, I need you to listen to me very carefully. You're going to be okay. I'm going to help you. What's the address of the shelter? As Sophie gave him the information, Ben looked at Grace. At the house behind her where Emma was playing piano, where the twins were probably building something that would need to be cleaned up later, where life happened in all its messy, beautiful chaos. He'd answered a wrong number 2 years ago, and it had given him everything. Now another child was calling, another family needed help. And Ben knew with absolute certainty that he'd answer this call too, and the next one, and the one after that. Because that's what family did. Not just the family you built in your own home, but the larger family of humanity. The people who needed someone to show up, someone to care, someone to say yes when the world kept saying no. Sophie, Ben said, his voice steady and sure, I'm going to catch a flight to Seattle tonight. My wife and I are going to meet you tomorrow morning, and we're going to figure this out together. You're not alone anymore. Do you understand? You're really coming? Sophie's voice was small, hopeful, afraid to believe. I'm really coming. My family knows what it's like to need help, and we never forget. After he hung up, Grace came to stand beside him. She took his hand. Seattle? A 9-year-old girl, sick mother, about to be homeless. Grace smiled. When do we leave? First thing tomorrow. I'll have Marcus book the flight. Emma appeared in the doorway. Uncle Ben, are you helping someone? Ben had never corrected her. Even though legally he was her father now, Emma still called him Uncle Ben. And that was okay. Names didn't matter. Love did. Yeah, kiddo, a girl about your age needs help. Emma's face lit up. Like you helped us? Exactly like that. Good, Emma said firmly. Everyone should have someone who comes when they call. Ben looked at his family, at Grace, strong and healthy, at Emma, wise beyond her years, at the twins, visible through the window, playing without fear or hunger. And he thought about Sarah, about the promise he'd made, about how one answered call had changed everything. The foundation they'd started, the Benjamin and Sarah Morgan Family Fund, had helped 500 families in 2 years. Medical bills paid, housing secured, children kept with parents who loved them, families kept whole. It wasn't about the money. It had never been about the money. It was about showing up, about answering the call, about being the person someone could count on when everything else fell apart. David had never returned. The quarterly visits he was entitled to? He'd shown up once, 3 months after the trial. Stayed for 30 minutes. Asked Ben for money. When Ben refused, David left and never came back. His parental rights had been formally terminated 6 months later. Emma didn't ask about him anymore. As far as she was concerned, Ben was her father in every way that mattered. That night, after the children were asleep, Ben and Grace sat in the living room. The house was quiet in the way homes with children get quiet, a temporary peace before tomorrow's chaos. Do you ever regret it? Grace asked. Answering that call. Your life was simpler before. Ben thought about his life before. The empty penthouse, the endless work, the hollow success. Not for a second, he said. My life wasn't simpler. It was emptier. There's a difference. What do you think Sarah would say? If she could see us now? Ben smiled. I think she'd say I finally got it right. That I finally understood what she was trying to tell me. That life isn't about what you build for yourself. It's about what you build for others. Grace leaned her head on his shoulder. I love you. I love you too. Upstairs, Emma stirred in her sleep. She'd had nightmares for months after the trial. Afraid David would come back. Afraid the judge would change her mind. Afraid she'd wake up and it would all be a dream. But the nightmares had faded. Now she slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that she was safe, that she was loved, that she had a family who would never leave. In the twins' room, Liam and Owen slept in their matching beds, surrounded by toys they actually owned, fed, healthy, growing. 3 children who might have been lost in the system, who might have been separated, who might have grown up believing no one cared. Instead, they'd been found. They'd been kept together. They'd learned that family wasn't about blood. It was about choice, about commitment, about showing up every single day and choosing love. Ben's phone lit up on the coffee table. A text from Marcus. Flight booked for tomorrow, 6 a.m. I assume you're going to miss the board meeting again? Ben typed back. Yep, some things are more important than board meetings. Marcus's response came immediately. Sarah would be proud of you, brother. Ben looked around his living room, at the toys scattered on the floor, at the photos on the wall, Ben and Grace's wedding, Emma's school picture, the twins' birthday party, a family trip to the coast. Evidence of a life lived, a life that mattered. He thought about Sophie in Seattle, scared, alone, waiting for someone to help. He thought about Emma 2 years ago, standing on a corner with 2 babies and a grill, making a desperate call to a stranger. He thought about all the children out there right now, this very moment, who needed someone to answer, someone to show up, someone to care. And he knew with every fiber of his being that he'd keep answering, one call at a time, one family at a time. Because that's what you did when you'd been saved. You reached back and saved someone else. The cycle continued. The call went out. And somewhere someone answered. Always.